Hi everyone, it's Mr. Rozon here. Welcome to another video of a Java coding tutorial, and this is actually going to be part 2 of a video I did earlier where I was writing to a text file. Um, so in my previous video I wrote a file called herodata.txt. This is what the file looked like when it was done, and I'm going to show you now how to open that file up. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm actually going to make it in a separate project. I'll get it working in a separate project, and then what I'll do is I'll put the code into this, so this program will do both. So I'll show you what I mean by that. Let's create a new project first. Okay, let's call it Hero Display. Okay, and to display the hero, it's not that difficult. Okay, so what I actually need to open up a text file, there's a bunch of different ways, but the way that I generally do it is with an object called a BufferedReader. So it's BufferedReader. Okay, and then I have to give this thing a name. So I usually call it BR equals new BufferedReader. And inside of here I put new file reader. And then I would put in hero data.txt. Now right now I know this is an issue. This is not going to be pointing in the right spot, but I'll fix that in a second. Okay, before I get going, I'm just going to fix my imports, and it's going to tell me about a IO exception. Oh, sorry, a FileNotFoundException. Okay, so it's telling me there's a FileNotFoundException. I think I can guard that with just an IO exception. Let's just try that. Catch IO exception, IOE, and then I put in system.err.println problem opening the file. Yeah, that does work. So I think the reason it works is because the FileNotFoundException, I think, is probably a subclass of this. It's part of the IO exception. IO exception is just a generic exception or error class for anything input or output related. So if you catch those errors, that'll catch all of the different types of errors. It doesn't have to be the FileNotFoundException. Because like if you look at the error, it's actually telling me to guard for the FileNotFoundException. If you guard for the IO exception, that will deal with it, I'm pretty sure. Well, it does. It deals with it. Okay, so when we're reading in files, it's basically a three-step process. First step is this one right here. So step 1, open the file. So you have to open it up for reading, and that's what this does. So basically, what you need to do is you need to chain a buffered reader with a file reader. The file reader essentially will read the bytes, like the raw data, out of this text file here. But it's difficult to make strings and stuff with that. So it's just coming in like one byte at a time or one character at a time. And it's hard to sort of deal with that. So the buffered reader, you chain it with this, and what this does will actually allow you to read strings indirectly. So it'll take the information from the file reader and turn it into strings, which makes it really easy for us. So let's see how this is going to work. So let's say I want to get the first line. Let's create a variable called line. It's going to be a string. And we're just going to line equals br.readLine. That will read in exactly one line from this file. And then we can print it out. Let's print in line. Okay, so this is like step 2 right here. So step 2, read in the information. Okay, and then, so that'll read in one line. I'll show you how to deal with multiple lines in a second. Let's get one line working first, okay? And the last thing, step 3, is to close the file. So you still want to close this file, and the way we do it is br.close. Okay. If we run this right now, it's going to give me an error, guaranteed. It's going to say problem opening the file. Okay. I'll show you what the exact error is. The way I can see the exact error is to print out IOE. Print out that the IO exception object right here, this thing. It's going to tell me it's a FileNotFoundException. Okay. So why is there a file not found? So inside of my project, I did not give a path to this text file at all. Right now, if I look under files, okay, the one I'm currently working on is hero display. It's not part of my project. It's part of this one, but it's not part of this project. So we got a couple different ways we can deal with this. So the way I would deal with it is to actually get the path to the actual file. And the way I can do that is I need to go to my NetBeans projects. So where I find it in my Mac, at least, is going to be under Mac HD up here. I go under users, NetBeans projects, and hero list, I believe, is where I had it. Yeah. So there's my text file. I need to get the path to this thing. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to right click this, get info, and right here I'm going to highlight this thing and Command C copy that. Okay, now I'm going to go back to NetBeans and we're going to paste it right here. And then put a slash there. So that's it. So that's the actual path to my file. It's users, Rozon, NetBeans project, hero list. It's in the other project, right? Hero data.txt. So that's one way of dealing with it. The other way of dealing with it maybe is you could copy this file. Like if you look at where the file is here, you could actually copy. Where is it? Hero list. You could copy this file right here, and you could put it into the root of your project. You put it right here. Okay, so then you don't have to worry about a path. But that's not necessarily the best thing, because if the object or the file changes then and you copied it, it's not going to change in a new copy, right? So this is a better way of doing it. So let's see if it actually works now. So this should open this up. And oh, and by the way, if you're on a Windows machine, again, you just have to get the path. It's probably going to look like C:/ whatever, but you got to figure out the actual path to your document from wherever it's coming from. Okay, so again, this should open up. It should read in exactly one line of the file. It should then print that line, and then it should close. So what it should say is Hero Bilbo Baggins, and then that's it. Let's run it, make sure it works. And it did work. There you go. Okay, now let's look at this file, right? So I've got exactly 8 lines, right? So I could do a loop and maybe do this 8 times, right? So I could say for int I equals 0, I less than 8, I plus plus. That is a loop that will run 8 times. And I could do that, right? And that should display my file. And we've got everything, right? Here's the problem with that, though. The problem is, what if I go in my program, I go back in my other program, and I add another hero in, and now I've got more lines. Let's do that. I'm just going to add another one in. Okay, this would be, I don't know, Iron Man. You know, an 8, 8, 8. Okay, now it's got 12 lines. So if I run this strategy of, printing out 8 lines, that's not going to work, right? I don't know how many lines is in my text file. That's a big problem. If I know exactly how many there are, it's not an issue. So like say I was overwriting it and I knew there's always only 4 lines, I could do this very easily with 4 lines, right? But this has an unknown number, okay? So how do we deal with this? So there's different ways. br.readLine. This method right here actually gives you some information. Okay. And what happens is when you, if you read this carefully, what it does, okay, and you can also look at the Java API, read what it says. It says, what does it return? It returns a string containing the contents of the line, not including any line termination character. That basically means enter. Or null if the end of the stream has been reached. That is your clue right there. It will send back a null if the end of the string or stream has been reached, which means the end of the file. So we can basically keep reading in those lines as long as we don't get a null. Once we get a null, that tells me it's the end of the file. So sometimes it's really helpful to read the documentation. So here's how I would do this. We can go ahead, and I'm just going to comment this for a second here. And there's different ways of doing this loop, but generally I like using a while loop. So we can do something like this. We can say start the line with nothing like that. And we can say while line not equal to null. And then we can say line equals br.read line, bracket, bracket. And then system out.println line. Like that. Actually, instead of starting with the quote, quote, let's actually start it with this command. And no, it'll be fine like that. That loop should work. So the idea here is we're going to start the line, the string, with just an empty string. It's definitely not equal to null, so it'll start the loop. Okay, that's this means. This means not equal to. It's going to read in a line from the text file and store it in a line variable. It'll print it out, and it'll loop it around. Okay. Now, as long as it's not null, it'll continue doing it. I think it might be an issue. It might print null at the end. I might have to change it slightly. Let's see. Yeah, it went one too far. So what it's doing is it actually, on the very last time through the loop, it read this in, it got a null, and then it printed it. The way I could fix that is just an if statement. If line is not equal to null, then you print it. Like that. That should remove the null at the end. Okay, that worked. There's an alternative way, though. You could actually do it even more efficiently and a bit smaller. And I've seen it done this way before. This may be the best version. And what I'll do is I'll just simplify it. You can write this. So while you need two sets of brackets to this. Line equals br.readLine. And then we put outside the brackets, we say not equal to null. System.out.println line. I'm just going to comment this one out here. Because we can't, once we've read it already once, you can't read it twice. This basically will do the exact same thing. So what it's going to do is it's a while loop that what it'll do is it's actually sort of like a two-step process. First thing it's going to do, if you think about bedmass, it goes inside the brackets, right? It's going to read in the line and store it into this variable called line. It's going to read it in. You're going to keep doing that while that thing is not equal to null. And then inside the loop, all you do is print out the line variable. So it's sort of the same as this, but it's a lot faster and more efficient because the operation's occurring in 2 lines instead of 4. Let's see if it works the same way. And it does, look at that. And no null at the end, which is great. So really, 2 lines of code, you know, if you don't include this right here, that'll read in the entire contents of the file. So again, this was just sort of to break it down into the steps, but I'm just going to remove that because that's not the one I would use. I would use this one right here. Oops. And we can get rid of this as well. Okay. The for loop is good if you know exactly how many lines you're going to read in, but if you don't know, then you have to do something similar to what I have here. You have to continue reading in lines while it's not equal to null. Okay, so that's basically it. I might even be able to actually remove this. It's telling me it's never used. Let's just try that. That's the most simple version right here. Let's try it again. Awesome. So there you go. So this is the code to read in all of the lines of a text file. If you wanted, you actually could incorporate this code into the other program if you want. So what you could do is you could have like a read section, read in the file here. And then what I would do is basically just copy and paste all of this. Copy and paste all of this here. But the only thing is you don't need the path anymore, or you could even leave the path. It won't really make a difference. But you could copy and paste this part right here into your other program right here. So it'll write it first, then it'll read it. So again, let's just go through the steps one last time. So we got a 3-step process when you're reading in text files. First one is to create a buffer reader to open the file. And again, you can see the code for this thing here. It's a buffer reader. It chains up with a file reader, and then you put the text file path right here. Step 2 is you have to read in all the information. And in this case, I used a while loop. It's going to keep looping forever until you hit a null. And once you hit a null, that means it's the end of the file, and that's going to stop it. Okay? That'll break the loop, I should say. Finally, step 3, you need to close the file. And also you have to guard for IO exceptions as well. So I hope this makes some sense to you. Reading in text files is not really that difficult. You just use a loop, keep looping while you don't get a null, or if you know exactly how many lines are in the file, it's pretty straightforward. You just read in using a regular for loop without any kind of, you don't have to worry about nulls basically if you know how many you're going to get. So I hope this helps out some understanding of how to read and write files in Java, and hopefully that makes some sense to you.